Okay. Good evening. Thank you. We're officially calling the CAC meeting for July 15th to order. Thank you all for joining us. Appreciate it. Hope everybody's doing well, staying healthy, all that good stuff. This is going to be a majority of a listening session. We have a lot of information to cover tonight, and Office of Planning and Zoning is going to give us a lot of information. So we will do our best to recognize you, but I encourage you to listen. It will be taped. You can go back and listen to it and see it at another time if you miss anything. So I encourage you to limit your comments until we get through everything, because there's a lot of information to go out tonight. A couple other things. This presentation tonight is to the Citizens Advisory Committee. You will see maps that are going to be provided to the Citizens Advisory Committee for their review over the next 2 weeks. They will not be available to those of you who are watching or listening to the general public. And so we have had an opportunity to work through them, see what glitches there might be, what can be improved in one thing or another. And all this information will be provided, but I just want to make sure that you all know, for those of you who are not members of the CAC, you're not able to comment, and after tonight, you won't be able to see the maps until at a later time. So we're the guinea pigs, we're the trial group. This is the first time that the maps have been provided outside of the Office of Planning and Zoning. And that's why, for those members of the CAC that were asking to look at the maps, they are hot off the press. They have been updated. We always have a pre-planning meeting before this meeting. So I do double the meetings, and we had our meeting on Monday and they weren't available yet, even for me to look at. So number one, that's the first thing I wanted you to know. And this is privileged information for the CAC people. We are not sharing links at a future date. If you go into your Google Drive for right now, you are representing your area on the CAC. And eventually we will be able to, it'll be very public and we'll have lots of time for lots of people to comment on them. But right now we want to work out the kinks and make sure that we have right titles, we have the right colors. I mean, you'll see. Planning and Zoning has done an awesome job. Awesome job. I can't give enough credit to how hard they have worked to put this together. This was not contracted out. This was all done in-house. And you will see it has been hours and hours and hours of work behind the scenes. I just got a tidbit of information before. So the other thing I wanted to address is there was an email that was sent just a few minutes ago, and I have looked at it, but I don't think OPC has had a chance to look at it yet because they've been working so hard on these maps and getting ready for tonight's meeting. So we will not be addressing that email at this time. So I think I get to turn it over to Michael.
Yeah, I can just do a quick overview of our agenda tonight, and then I'll pass it on to to the rest of the staff. I see we've got some guests who I haven't seen before, so just introduce myself. Michael Stringer, I'm a senior planner with Arundel County Office of Planning and Zoning. Tonight on our agenda, we're going to give you a brief update on the status of the planning process, overview in the beginning, and then at the end of the meeting, we'll talk more detail about scheduling next steps. Then we'll launch into the two big content areas. Discussion of the resource sensitive areas map. This is something that this group has talked about a lot, the importance of the need to identify those important natural and cultural resources in the county that need to be protected. So Holly Simmons from our office will give you an overview of that information as it stands today. And then the draft planned land use map. Patrick Hughes will give you an update on that, as well as Brent Effune will give you an overview of the online web application that we've prepared to give you access to this tool to be able to comment on the planned land use map. And as Elizabeth said, you're our test group. The tool you'll see is designed to be a fully public online interactive website. online open house. So you'll be able to see all of that, and it'll, after you kind of test it for us, we'll make refinements to it, make sure it works well, and then it'll launch out to the full public. And finally, we'll briefly touch on the revisions to the vision themes that you all looked at over the weekend and sent in your comments on. Then we'll wrap up by talking about next steps. So with that quick overview, before I pass it to Patrick, about our overall status. This is the same diagram we've shown you the last few meetings. The big elements of the plan, the vision and themes we've drafted. You've seen some refinements of those theme language. The development policy areas map we've reviewed and discussed, and then that informs the planned land use map, which we're going to be going into in depth tonight. We've completed, as of our last meeting, the review of all the goals, policies, and strategies for each of the 4 big topic areas of the natural environment, built environment, healthy communities, and healthy economy. And then staff are internally coordinating with the different departments to make sure that we're building out a robust implementation plan and performance measures. And these performance measures will link up with and dovetail with the open Arundel stat measures that you're seeing come online on the county's website as well. So with that overview, let me pass it to Holly to talk about the resource sensitive areas map.
Thanks, Mike. So just to give you a brief overview of what I will be covering when talking about the resource sensitive policy area, I will touch briefly on what that is, a reminder there, the purpose of that policy area, the map that we have developed to correspond to the policy area, and then the component parts of the map that, that make up the policy area, along with some future developments that we anticipate as pertains to this policy area. So just as a reminder, the definition that you see on your screen now is the one that was developed by you all and staff, I believe in winter 2019-2020. The resource sensitive policy area, which is an area that's overlays the whole development policy area map that Mike mentioned earlier, which feeds into the land use plan. The definition for that policy area is areas of natural, cultural, or physical features of special concern or significance within the county intended for conservation and preservation from the adverse effects of development. Development in these areas is guided by policies and regulations to limit or prohibit impacts of land uses to sensitive areas. So there's a lot to unpack there, but what we've done is consolidated a number of different features that are roughly broken into 2 different buckets, which you can see in those maps on the screen. Part 1 corresponds to policies and internal guidance that we have for specific areas of the county around natural, cultural, and physical features. And then in part 2, and you can see there's a lot of overlap here, roughly corresponds to regulations that we have within our code. Okay, let me see if I'm able to move this now. There we go. There was lag. Bear with me for a moment. All right. So what you see in front of you is a still of the map that we have developed, and with any luck, I'll be able to click into that. And we can explore here a little bit before I go into the various elements of this map. So what you can see on your screen is they're the component parts of that first map, the blue one that was on the left. And this kind of mirrors some tools that we have internally to look at, to give us information on natural and cultural resources throughout the county. but we've consolidated them here into a map that can be used both internally and in the future will be available to the public is our anticipation. So the areas that have loaded on the map so far are those ones where we have policies. You can see we have the bog areas, historic resources, cemeteries, the Jabez Branch watershed, critical areas, and the priority preservation area down in South County. So this map is interactive. You can turn various layers on and off. And also you're able to look at different, like if you want to look at aerials, which we won't do now, but just for future reference, you can come over here into this base map gallery and it shows you various different things that if you don't like this gray background, you'd be able to look at an aerial or a road map, etc. So I think it's important to remember with this policy area that it's basically an amalgam of a number of different areas throughout the county where there is guidance and regulations. And we've used it at this point as a tool to review potential changes in land use, which Patrick will go into that plan, that land use plan more in the future. But we used this now to help evaluate land use change applications that we received where we were considering a change in land use, and also areas throughout the county where staff recommended a change in land use. I think if I go back.
We have a couple questions in the chat, Holly, if you can respond to about how do we know what the different colors mean in the map?
Great questions. Okay. So if you see over here on the right side, you can click into, there's like a little caret over on the side. And if you click that, then you'll see the legend shows you the color of any feature on the map. And then also there are areas where with an application like this, you have a bunch of different things showing up on the map and some of them overlap with one another. So that's where if you are looking, for instance, down in this area of South County, and you think, oh, it looks like right here, there's something. Right here, it looks like there are two things in one area, and you're able to come in and click on this little button that says opacity and make one of those bubbles more transparent so you can kind of see what is underneath it as well. So this serves both as a way to turn these layers that they're called, each individual blob, turn those on and off to see below them or to focus in on something, but also to be able to make something more opaque or less opaque so you can see a couple of different things at one time.
Thanks. And Holly, another quick question. Can you discuss a little bit, we've got a lot of different kinds of data here. Can you kind of give us a general overview about the source, where this data comes from, and maybe speak to the accuracy and
Yeah, I'll actually get into that a couple of slides down the road. But there is a lot of data on this map, and it comes from a variety of sources. Some are at the state level, some are generated internally in our office. And I think, was that a question that someone asked?
Yes.
Because I'll circle back to that. Okay, yeah, great. So
Before you answer that, sorry, can you go back just a little bit when you talk about the layers height and the drop down menus? That when you were referring to the little arrow, that's your drop down menu on your layers. And then you people will probably want to print out the.
I'm really sorry. I can't understand you, Elizabeth.
Can you understand me now? Am I better?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I was too close. The carrot is the drop-down menus, I'm assuming. And when you go in and you want to look at the layers, I'm assuming that people will want to print out the key so that they can do it. This is going to take a while to learn, and it's going to take some time. So people need to spend some time on it. And then eventually, if you do have questions, they need to go to Holly. And it would be helpful if you can copy all of us, because we may have the same issue that we're trying to discover and figure out ourselves. But please, the CAC members, take some time to play with this. And it's just like a new program. You're going to have to learn how it works. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. If there is a question in there, I'm really sorry I didn't catch it.
No question.
Okay.
I'm just encouraging people to play with this, like you were talking about the opacity, and be able to look at the overlays and
Okay.
to figure that stuff out. Thank you.
Okay, I think I got it. Yeah. So, were there any other questions on this? I will get into a bit more information on the various, the data that is on this map and how it functioned in our analysis, and also additional information that's shown here as well in just a moment.
Yeah, I think there's some questions, but I think you'll cover them in your next slides. Yeah.
Okay. I'm happy to take any questions at the end as well, just in case I do end up covering something down the road. Okay, so for the first part that we did cover with this analysis, we were primarily focusing on 4 different sets of data where we do have, which we're able to, Okay. Able to factor into the evaluations of our land use change applications and areas where we were considering staff recommended changes in land use. Those are our cultural resources, which you can see all the way to the left here, areas of historic and archaeological significance, as well as that including cemeteries as well. The priority preservation area, which is outlined in the GDP, and which we have it's a state program as well. Our environmental overlays, including our bog protection areas and the critical areas, specifically the most sensitive of the 3 designations within the critical area, which is the resource conservation area. And then the Jabez Branch subwatersheds as well, which are all the way over to the right-hand side. So we looked at each of these 4 areas to add another layer of information to our evaluations for potential land use changes in these areas, and considered them in conjunction with our development policy area map generally, along with prior history of individual parcels, and a number of other data points for each area that was looked at for a land use change application, or where we were considering increasing intensity of use. And that is that part one, that blue that you saw initially, is comprised of these 4 different areas. And another area, some additional data that's provided on the map as kind of an indication of a potential area where there may be an environmental feature that we look at primarily during development review are just a moment. Okay, are these sensitive environmental features that are addressed in our code and which are regulated through our code. So you can see on the left, we have streams, which we do have environmental protections on, steep slopes, wetlands, the FEMA floodplain, which there are regulations around how development may or may not occur within the floodplain, and within the critical area habitat protection areas that include any area within 100 feet of tidal waters or tidal wetlands. And you can see that some of these blobs, I guess you would call them, especially for instance with the streams, that big green area is not all a stream. There's also what we call a buffer around that stream, which is, in the case of streams, 100 feet within a distance of the stream that is also protected. And that's why that area looks so much bigger. And some of these, you can see especially with the wetlands, for instance, that there are impervious surfaces below that green blob, which you would guess if you're looking at this, that there's probably not a wetland below what I think may be some tennis courts here. And this drives home the point that in the case of these specific environmental features, we have a lot of data that's able to tell us, hey, maybe something is in this area, or perhaps historically there was a wetland here, but it's not the end all be all of where that sensitive environmental feature is out in space. It may be there, but if you're looking at aerials and you see that in fact there is a house or a business where our data says there's a wetland here, then you need to factor in other information as well. And with the development process, we do have, a requirement that qualified professionals need to go out into the field and verify whether there are sensitive environmental features on a site or not, to complement this information that we have, which is provided by the state. In the case of wetlands, we have maps from the Department of Natural Resources, as well as the National Wetland Institute. And we also have state-provided maps of wetlands of special state concern. And we factor all of that in to figure out if something is actually on site or not, and then regulate it as such. And with that said, environmental data changes over time. So even if maybe 30 years ago, there was a wetland in an area, if it's been since developed, it may not be there anymore. Or it may have moved slightly in space. And that's why we do require for those to be field verified. And as I mentioned earlier, although the map that I just showed you is a new map that we've developed, we have had internal mapping technology available for quite some time, and we use all of those resources as indicators in making decisions. And in addition to the regulations that we implement as the Office of Planning and Zoning, there's also a stormwater review that occurs in inspections and permits, and the Soil Conservation District reviews for sediment and erosion control measures as well. So this is that part of that second part where we do look at things at the time of development. Okay, there we go. So the resource sensitive policy area map is just one tool that we have in a suite of land use tools to ensure protection of these environmental and cultural resources. In addition to looking at things in terms of those policy areas that I outlined for the cultural resources, agricultural and woodland preservation, our environmental overlays, and the Jabez Branch sub-watershed, we also have looked at all of the parcels throughout the county for potential inclusion in our conservation or open space land use categories, which Patrick will go over when he goes over the land use plan generally. We also have the natural environment element of Plan 2040, which you all have developed and the CAC worked on as well. That outlines, further steps for improvement of our environmental regulations and policies. Additionally, the state will review our land use plan. We'll have further evaluation at the region plan stage. And then we have a few master plans as well, including the Green Infrastructure Master Plan, which we'll be developing in the future, I believe, soon after Plan 2040 process is complete. And then Rec and Parks has their Land Preservation Parks and Recreation Plan 2017, which serves as a guide for park development and land preservation throughout the county. And then some of the information that you see on this slide here are areas where we're continuing to improve the data that we have available to us in determining land use and in guiding our regulation of sensitive environmental features. Our GIS and research section is continuing to develop a priority forest retention area layer, which is going to indicate particularly areas of forest interior dwelling bird species habitat. And that's being developed now. What you see on the screen here is the most current iteration. Then we also have the County Inventory of Historic Resources, which is a definition in our code. Currently, we have a couple of different sources of, or a couple of different files that have information on these historic and cultural resources, and they're going to be consolidated all into one place to really correspond with that definition of the County Inventory of Historic Resources. And then that Green Infrastructure Network, which was in development previously, and we'll go back and revisit that after the adoption of Plan 2040. So this map is also intended, again, as we develop new data and new information becomes available, as policies and regulations are adopted, we'll continue to update that map as well to better inform land use decisions and regulations. And I think that there are probably quite a few questions. So I don't know should I pause to answer those now? I'll defer to you on that, Mike, how you want to proceed.
Yeah, I think now's a nice time for a pause if folks have questions.
Sure.
I saw that Billy Molden put a question there about how does the group access the maps. We haven't made them publicly available yet. We'll need to grant that access to make them publicly available. As we said kind of at the beginning, these are still in draft, so we need to work with our IT folks to make it available to the CAC. So that's not available right now if you click on the link, but we'll get that to you as soon as we can.
And will you send out email Mark or Mike and let us know when they're up so that we can start studying, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And there's another question on the chat from Kristen Pauley about comparing our maps and plans with adjacent counties. Do any of the other planners want to comment on that?
I will. Yeah, the answer is yes. We do coordinate with other counties, and I'll give you an example. The map that Holly is showing, that is our kind of a green infrastructure network in process. The very southern part of the county where you see green is, we're proposing as a greenway area, and Calvert County. We looked at Calvert County's greenways plan to coordinate what were they planning in that area, and that is their greenway as well, or at least what they're calling a preservation area. So, that's just one example, but we coordinated early on in this process with adjacent counties and what their future land use plans are.
So I'm going back and reading through these questions now. I don't know if there are any that I'm about halfway through them. Are there any that I should respond to right now?
I think you're good, Holly. Go ahead and keep going, because we have a lot, and then people can write if they need to, but you've answered most of them. Hold it till the end, because she'll probably answer your question. Back to you.
Back to me? Okay, I will pass it over to Patrick at this point, I believe.
Thank you, Holly. Can everybody hear me all right? So Holly gave you the overview of the resource sensitive policy area, and I would like to give you a broad overview of how the Plan 2040 land use map was drafted, and provide you some orientation that'll help you with your review, and that you should have in your mind in order to give us input on that. So I'm going to give you that overview, and then my colleague Brent is going to give you an introduction to the tool that you will actually use to review the land use plan. You received a briefing paper by email today, and so that is pretty much what I'm going to walk through with you right now. So just to introduce you to the thinking and the criteria used to develop this land use plan. And what we want from you is to really understand, we want for you to understand the analysis behind this plan, and then provide input to see if there's anything that we've missed in developing this. And another key goal is to really have you all test this online review tool that has been put together. It's been a very, very time consuming technical process for us, something new. And we'd like to have, you all as guinea pigs to work with it before it does go public. So hopefully you can let us know if there are glitches that you find before it is rolled out to the public. So Mike, if you can go to the next slide, please. So just a reminder, we've talked about this, but it's worth reviewing. What is the purpose of the land use map? And the purpose is to provide broad guidance for the land use patterns in the county, looking out with about a 20-year planning horizon. And essentially, this is a key centerpiece of Plan 2040. The land use plan is based in the Plan 2040 vision and goals and policies and the development policy area maps that you all have drafted. And it's also informed by input from the citizens and from stakeholders throughout the process. As a reminder, the land use map does set the stage for zoning. So when the land use map is adopted by Plan 2040, it's implemented through several tools, including zoning. The zoning map ultimately has to be consistent with the land use map, and that's done that's done primarily through comprehensive zoning. Subdivision and development regulations will also help implement the land use plan, and the plan helps then guide public funding and investments as well. So next slide, please. So this is a big picture overview of how the staff developed the land use map. We completed a comprehensive analysis of the entire county using the 2009 General Development Plan's land use plan as a baseline to consider development patterns, observations, and public input. And what we did was we identified where there were inconsistencies between the existing land use, what's on the ground today, inconsistencies between that and the planned land use designation, the zoning, the development policies areas map, in order to develop a list of recommended changes from the 2009 land use designations. The changes in the draft land use designation from the 2009 land use are recommended based on the criteria that you see on the screen before you. So is it consistent with the Plan 2040 vision and the development policy area? We also looked at zoning, both the current zoning and in some cases were there past zoning decisions and rationale that needed to be considered. We looked at the existing use of the property and the surrounding planned uses. We looked at sewer service, the priority preservation area, and we looked at whether changing the land use would provide a public benefit, and we also considered public input on a particular area or property. So next slide, please. So this resulting draft planned land use, it has these categories, and this is pretty much the makeup of the county in this draft land use map. It's a snapshot broken out by the different land uses. And so for the entire county, the draft land use plan places just under 15%, of the area in conservation. Over a third of the county is in rural land use. 28% of the county ends up in low density or low medium density residential. And then just over 8% is in commercial, industrial, mixed use, or town center categories. Next slide, please. So there were several changes. I want to go through kind of the broad types of land use changes that are reflected in this draft. And the first are the land use category or designation changes that result from really revising the framework of the land use categories for this update. There's a new conservation land use designation that will replace the natural features designation. And this will apply to publicly and privately owned land that's conserved into perpetuity, such as properties and land trusts, platted floodplains, passive open space that's adjacent to platted floodplains and passive parks. And other sensitive areas like the floodplains or wetlands that are not currently protected into perpetuity and or may not be field verified currently, they're protected through various county and state regulations and mapped as the resource sensitive policy area that Holly just spoke about. For public and private outdoor recreation areas like ball fields and golf courses, campgrounds, etc., there is now an open space land use designation. And both the open space and the conservation designations will need to be expanded during the region planning process when we're able to get some fine-tuned input on designating both active and passive recreation areas. Publicly owned properties are now in a public use category. This replaces the government and institutional category from the 2009 GDP. What we had found in looking at the 2009 land use was that there were a lot of inconsistencies in how some of those areas were designated in the 2009 plan. And some of the private institutions that have been designated governmental or institutional in the 2009 plan, those since have changed use. And so putting only public properties in the public use category will hopefully better reflect a longer term reality. We no longer separate out the transportation and utility rights of way. So this category has been eliminated in this land use plan. We're still working through the technical aspects of this though. So when you all get into the online tool that we give you to look at, these are going to show up as null with no land use assigned, and we're still working through that. But we didn't see any value to having a right-of-way, transportation or utility right-of-way separate land use, and so that's been eliminated. The low density, low medium density, and medium density residential designations, those were given a pretty comprehensive analysis looking at the existing on the ground built density and also considering their zoning. And so we sort of reapplied those designations to help resolve some of the inconsistencies between those things. So for example, a lot of the single family residential neighborhoods in Brooklyn Park, just as an example, they had been in the 2009 plan in medium density residential, but their built density is really more like low medium density residential. And so we're showing that in this plan for areas like that. And we sort of did a similar analysis for a lot of different areas. The 4 mixed use designations, mixed use residential, mixed use employment, mixed use commercial, and mixed use transit, those have been combined into one total mixed use category. And then finally, the small business category, land use category from 2009, that has been incorporated into the commercial land use category. So those are the land use category changes that you will see. Next slide. And then there are some fairly broad, what we're calling consistency changes. One type is looking at areas where the 2009 land use plan did not accurately reflect the existing built densities and development types, and where these existing uses, we're expecting them to remain throughout the next 20 years. So for those areas, a more realistic land use designation was applied. And this impacted a lot of the planned unit developments, multifamily developments, and townhouses that are already built on the ground and they're likely to remain. Another type of change was just simply changes where the 2009 land use didn't align well with the existing parcel boundaries. And so we resolved those issues. And then changes where the planned land use designation doesn't really align with current zoning, but where we expect that zoning is going to remain in place in the future. So we've proposed a more appropriate land use designation for those. Next slide. So there are a handful of what we're calling just staff recommended changes. These are a little bit more significant, and some of these are changes so that an area can be more consistent with the existing use that's on the ground and that's expected to remain in the future. There were 54 of those changes in the county, and then changes in the planned land use that will help a property or an area better align with the development policy area that's been drafted. And there were 12 of those changes in total. Next slide. We did look at and consider all of the land use change applications that we got. So we got about 180, I think it was 189 applications that we got. 7 of them were withdrawn early in the process for various reasons. And so ultimately we evaluated 182 land use change applications. And of those, 14 of those applications were really just requests that the landowner wanted to maintain their existing land use, and we supported that. So the other recommendations that we have made on the others, we've supported 12 requests to simply better align the land use with the parcel boundary. We've supported 58 of the land use requests, and then we recommend not supporting 58 of the land use requests. For 10 of them, we we felt that there was a different land use than what was requested that would be a little bit more appropriate and would fit better with the vision and the goals and the policies that are drafted now. So for 10 of them, we recommended a different land use than what was requested. And then for 33 of them, we really recommended maintaining the current land use and reassess during the region plan when we can have a process with a little bit more community input on the ground for some of those applications. So that's it in a nutshell, some of the thinking behind the land use plan. And then what I would like to do now is hand it off to Brent Effune, who can give you an orientation to the mapping application that's going to let you dig in a little bit deeper into the land use map.
Before Brett starts, a lot of this information and a lot of these numbers is in the briefing document that was sent to the CAC earlier today. I highly encourage, before you dig into this, to study that briefing document and have it with you when you start looking. Thank you.
Alrighty, I guess I have, I've got control here at this point, so I'll take it away. Thanks, Patrick, Holly, Mike, appreciate it. So hi, everybody, I'm Brent Effune. I'm a planner with Long Range Planning, Office of Planning and Zoning. And I haven't had too much opportunity to interface with everybody here previously, so yeah, I'm sort of glad to have the opportunity to introduce myself and then show you guys this tool that, the series of tools that we've been working on diligently behind the scenes, and which we think they're looking pretty good. Okay, so Mike, I'm actually gonna start off on a different tab if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay.
Well,
so
while Brent's doing that, I'll make the comment that, you know, Brent's the guy who's back in the office doing all this technical work while we're talking.
yeah, they're all out having fun, and I'm slogging away, yeah, late into the night. Okay, so right, so we basically designed several tools here, and I'm going to go through the public feedback portion of the online open house. So we've designed this tool to be as user-friendly as possible while still displaying as much information as was feasible. And in fact, again, with that in mind, all the information you need to use the tool is contained in the brief instructions sidebar on the left-hand side of the screen. That's this sidebar right here. Everyone's going to have access to this. I strongly encourage you all just to read through it, because everything that I'm about to go over is in this sidebar. But still, just for the sake of showing you guys how this tool and a couple other tools that we created work, I'm just going to provide this brief tutorial. So at the outset, I'm just going to mention two things. So first of all, these tools are still in what we're calling the beta phase of the rollout. They are right there, 99%, but there are still some minor little cosmetic issues that we're in the process of ironing out. While we do that, just please ask you bear with us. And also, if there are things that you guys notice as you're going through and utilizing these tools, issues you run into, errors, even questions, please reach out. That's what we're here for. We want to make sure that this tool functions perfectly and flawlessly for you guys, and that especially by the time it goes public, fully public, that it functions perfectly. The other thing that I'm going to go ahead and mention, excuse me, is that we are recording this session. So depending on how smoothly this tutorial goes, what we're planning on doing is editing the footage down afterwards, putting it into a short, 5 or 8 minute video, and then sharing that out to the group. So do not feel like you need to take down every single thing that I say at this point, because you'll have the distinct pleasure of being able to watch this tutorial over and over and over again as many times as you please. Okay, So with that, we've basically designed, there's two different comment portions that are available to you guys and to the public eventually. I'm going to go over the first one, which is at the parcel and property level, and that's what we're looking at here with the screen. So at this level, and I'll just go ahead and let's just go ahead and zoom into a couple here. Okay. So what we're seeing here are two different kinds of land use change types, right? And they differ based on where the land use change originates from. So the one is property owner originated land use changes. So these are our land use change applications. The other are staff recommendations. And these are basically areas within the county that staff recognized as areas that are ripe for making improved land use decisions on. And so those are going to be in the blue dashed outline. So we're looking at two right now. There's SR 46 and SR 47. And then the land use applications, land use change applications. We have 142, 143, 67 there at the very bottom of the screen. Land use change application 22. One of the little cosmetic issues that I was referencing earlier is that we designed this on a larger screen. On a smaller screen, this sidebar here on the right-hand side, it's not displaying all the information that it was designed to display. We will be rectifying that after this meeting tonight. And at that point, the way that it's going to function is as you actually navigate through this map here, you'll notice that on the right-hand side that information is actually dynamic and it changes. So what it's showing, what this information is showing here is basically which either application, land use change application, or staff recommendation is being displayed in your web viewer. And so now the question is, right, how do we comment on these things? It's really easy. So there's two ways. You can either click directly on the application, which I've just done. It zooms in, and then on the right-hand side, you see that this information window pops up. This information window has all of the top-level information that you will need to look at this. So we have the current land use designation, so that is what it is now. You have the requested land use designation, so because this is a property owner originated land use change application, so they had to request something. So in this instance, they requested commercial. Now, staff looked at these applications, we looked at all the justification, and then we analyzed the heck out of them. And based on staff analysis, we came up with our own recommendation. And so that's going to be this right here. Staff recommended land use designation. So we're recommending in this instance low density residential, and we provide our staff justification down here at the bottom. So I want to read through that. We report on how many acres this property entails. We indicate that this is a property owner request, and actually, just as a side note, I didn't note this explicitly, but you'll notice that the prefix in these labels here. So we have LUCA and SR. So LUCA is an acronym that's land use change application. So all LUCAs, all land use change applications, are property owner requested. And then SR, all the SRs are staff recommendations. And so those originate with staff. Okay, so the other thing I'll go ahead and mention here is that this was top level information, but if you want to delve deeper, then there's two additional ways to delve deeper. So the first is to actually view the application that came in for this property. So really easy, you just click on the link. And here you go. Now we're looking at the application itself. And you'll see there's all kinds of information here, the tax map, the location information, what it is, what's being requested, why, and And as you go down, you can see more information. So definitely good for the deep divers amongst us. And then we also have these data sheets. Now the data sheets basically provide more information about the staff analysis of these applications. So we have just a little bit more here. We also have the public comments. So after this is some background here. After the land use change application process window closed, so that was earlier this year, we also had a public comment period. And during that public comment period, members of the public were able to actually comment. Some of you guys may be aware of this, so this is possibly redundant information, but members of the public were able to comment on these applications. And we took that feedback and we brought it into our analysis. And so you're going to see that reflected here in this data sheet. So in this application, maybe I should have chosen a different one because this one had a good amount of opposition. So comments for, against, and the neutral were 0, 0, and 10. And then we summarize what those comments were. It shows what our staff recommendation is. It shows what our justification is. So it's just a little bit more of a deeper dive than what we show you in that pop-up. And what I will also mention is that you can take these data sheets home with you. These are PDFs, so you can download them. They can live on your own computer. And with that, you do not need to be logged in. You don't have to be looking at this input tool in order to view that information. Okay, so now you've looked at all the information. You're ready to provide your own input. So again, we've tried to make this as straightforward and as user-friendly as possible. So how do you do it? You go down to the bottom left of this pop-up window on the right, okay? And you'll see like a little text icon, like an SMS icon. All you do is you hover over it, you see it says add a comment, you click on it, and then it opens up this little comment screen here. There's a couple questions that you go through, and these are all, by the way, designed as drop-downs. And we've done that because we want to be able to have standardized results that we can then analyze and give standardized responses back to. And so you'll see that the very first option here is, do you agree? Right? So there's 3 options. You either do agree with the designation, what staff is recommending for this property, you don't, or you're neutral. And now we actually intentionally included the neutral option because to us it's important to know how many eyeballs are looking at these things. And so even if you don't have strong feelings on it, even if, well, I could go, yeah, you could go with our recommendation, go against it, it doesn't really matter to you. Just knowing that we have individuals who looked at it helps inform our decisions. And if we know that a majority of the people that looked at this really don't seem to care, that's useful information too. Okay, so then the next question here is, if you disagree, what do you think is most appropriate? And so again, we provided drop downs here, and these are all the different land use options, designations that are available for the current land use plan the land use plan that we are getting ready to release, that we're trying to release. So take your pick. Once you pick that, let's just go with, I'll go with low density residential. And then the next question here is, was the primary reason for your opinion? Okay, so if you agree with this, then what's the main driver of that, right? Is it compatibility with the surrounding area, traffic congestion, environmental protection, any of these options? And now, and I'll mention here that the options are actually the same in these first and second drop-down boxes. And the reason why is because we want to know what the primary driver is behind your opinion, and then we want to know what the secondary driver is behind your opinion. And we're going to weight both of those differently depending on primary and secondary. So as you're going through this, keep in mind that that we're interested in first order and then second order. So choose accordingly. The other thing that I'll go ahead and mention here is that these options, these actually came from that open or that public comment period that I referenced earlier. So we got around 1,000 or so comments on the land use change applications. Again, that was earlier this year. And we analyzed those. And based on what we saw, these were the primary themes that were behind people's comments. And so we believe that these should cover the vast majority of what is driving people in our county. And we believe that these options should cover the primary reasons that we're getting at here. Next up, name, email address, that's really important for our tracking purposes. And then also, that allows us to build our own repository of individuals in the county to keep up with, so that when future plans come around, you can be on our mailing address and we can get in touch with you to let you know what's happening and keep you abreast of information. Lastly, you put the date in there, and then once all that information's in, all you do is click submit. And when you click submit, that sends it over to us, and we now have that comment. And it is linked to application Luca 141. The same thing is it applies for the staff recommendations. It's the exact same process. You will notice, I think Patrick may have referenced this before, but you're going to see some NAs here, and that's because these are originated with staff. So there was no requested land use, so that's a non-applicable field. And there is also no application that came along with that. So that's really it. Now, just a quick word on how to navigate this thing. Once we've finished submitting our comment, you can hit the back button right here, and that'll just pull us back. And then you can zoom out, and you're zooming out the exact same way that you would in, say, Google Maps. With your mouse, you're clicking, you're grabbing, and then using your scroll wheel to zoom in, and then zoom out. Okay. You can also use these little icons on the left-hand side here. So the plus button is going to zoom us in, and the minus button is going to zoom us out. And that basically covers it. You're going to see this button right here, this home button. This is also a navigation button. You can click that, and it's going to take you up to this high level where then, once again, you're looking at all the applications and land use change types. One last thing I'll go ahead and mention on this tool here is that you can also search by address. So I'm just going to put in an address here. It's something I looked up earlier. This is an address for one of our applications, and that is 2571 Evergreen Lane. Okay, and we'll just click search, and there we go. So that's going to take us right here to application Luca 161. And again, as we pan in, as we zoom in, you can see that there are 3 land use change items here. Now there's 4 because I just zoomed out. You click on any of these and go directly to that land use change property, and then see the information and comment. Okay. So the next part of this.
Can we pause for just a second?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a good idea.
A couple questions that came up in the chat that I think are worth addressing is, one fundamentally is when we say we agree or disagree, what are we agreeing on? The land use change application or the staff recommendation? So I think if you can look at the panel on the right there, this is it has the property owner request for land use change 160. It lists what the current land use designation is, the requested, and then the staff recommended. So we're asking you to comment on the staff recommendation. It's do you agree or disagree with the staff recommendation? And we could see if we can maybe clarify that text in the tool to make that abundantly clear for everyone.
Correct. Yeah, and that's a really good and important distinction. So yeah, Mike, I appreciate you pointing that out. in fact, is now a good time to pause to maybe field a question or two, or should we plow ahead? Once again, all of this information is in the sidebar. We're going to edit this down to a tutorial. All the information will be referenceable elsewhere at a later point. But I don't know, Mike, should we pause or should we?
Yeah, let's address a couple of questions that came up in the chat. One was just a request for, would it be nicer to have an open comment field for this? Now, we debate that a lot internally. We do provide another comment tool that Brent will show you in a moment that's a Survey Monkey that allows you to make general comments on the land use map. And we decided to go with the drop-down menu for a couple of reasons. As Brent mentioned, we analyzed the past open-ended comments and distilled down the key themes from those. And this makes it easier for a person participating to be able to grab and comment on something. It also dramatically reduces the staff demand on analysis of those comments and allows us more clearly and efficiently to be able to quantify, to count, and report out what comments that we have received. So there's this limit or balancing that we try to do between how much open-ended commenting do we allow versus how much limited, and kind of balancing on the ease of use with making sure that it's gives people enough breadth of room to be able to state their opinions. So that's the balance we've struck on this. I'll say, this is a learning experience. We'll see how this goes and, see what the feedback is.
Right. Yeah. Well said, Mike. I think that really nails it.
And then another general comment that maybe Cindy or Patrick can speak to was a question that came up in the chat about, have the property owners been notified who have submitted these land use change applications, and who makes the final decision on these? We currently are looking at staff recommendations and then asking to comment on the staff recommendations. Can Cindy or Patrick speak to the property owner notification and final decision making?
Yeah, the land use change applicants are going to be notified immediately after this meeting. So we'll be reaching out to them right after this. And in terms of who makes the final decision, ultimately it's the council. Once they adopt Plan 2040, they're going to be the ones that will make the final decision on the whole land use plan.
And then Melanie posed a more complex question about form-based codes and how these land use designations might be able to interface with form-based codes. Are there innovative zoning ideas? Lori Rhodes is on the call. So Lori, you're the head of our zoning group. Can I ask you to speak to that, what the county is doing and thinking about with form-based codes or innovative zoning types?
Yes, good evening, everyone. This question has come up more than once, form-based codes and how we can incorporate that in our current zoning process, our current zoning ordinance. Form-based codes is something that we really need to have a clear strategy for how we want to incorporate that. A lot of people get form-based codes mixed up with mixed use, and it's not. Form-based codes focus more on the form of a building. So we would have to have the architectural experience in planning and zoning to help realize what this form-based code would look like. So we would have to staff people to be able to implement that code. And that's something that is on the list, but it's a work in progress because form-based is not mixed use. It's about the form of the building, and it deviates from Euclidean zoning. So you're not looking at usage, you're looking more at form. So that's definitely something that we're looking into.
All right. Okay. Brent, could I ask you to quickly show the group the SurveyMonkey tool to provide general comment?
Yeah, definitely. I think we need to go ahead and just share the screen again here. Oh, here we go. Apologize. That was probably, I don't even think that came down. Yeah. So right. So we wanted to provide the opportunity to comment at both the parcel property scale, but also getting to the question of general comments. We wanted to be able to provide the opportunity to comment generally on the land use map. And so we designed that into a survey monkey survey. I believe everyone here hopefully should have some experience just based on some of the previous surveys that we've sent out as part of the CAC with SurveyMonkey. So hopefully this is familiar territory for most of you. If not, we're definitely happy to help out. But that's going to be in this left-hand sidebar here on this comments on planned land use map tab. So I'm going to just go down to it, and it's just a matter of clicking that link. And once you do, it just takes you directly to the survey here. There's some instructions, little information. There's a link to table, and again, just some background information, useful information to bring with you into the survey. Click next, and sends the survey. I don't think I really need to go too in depth on, instructions on how to fill out a survey. It's pretty straightforward. We try to make it pretty straightforward. Also, all of you are encouraged to take the time to go through and leave your comments there.
So you see some rating questions there, and at the very bottom, there's an open-ended comment.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out. Here we go.
Okay.
And
So,
should we go over the swipe tool, Mike?
yeah, could you please do that?
Yeah. Yeah, gladly. So again, this is my part of this presentation is nearly over here. This is another cool tool that we're also in the process of designing. Now, this, when it's done, and we're targeting tomorrow. There have been some technical issues that we're ironing out with our information technologies department. But this will be incorporated into the online open house tool that we were previously looking at. And so what we're looking at here is basically, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom out to our full extent. Once again, I think I prematurely zoomed in. What we're looking at here is a map of Anne Arundel County and two separate land use maps. And those maps are basically divided by this swipe tool in the middle here. Now, if you can see my cursor, I'm kind of just scrolling down this barrier here. You'll see a little icon with a left arrow and a right arrow attached to it. And what that's indicating is that you can grab this swipe tool and you can slide it left and right. And as I'm doing that, you'll notice that the contents underneath are changing. And the reason that they are is because on the left-hand side of this slider, we have our 2009 GDP land use map. So that is the land use map that we're currently working from. On the right-hand side of the map is our Plan 2040 land use map, planned land use map. And what this tool is designed to do is be able to show the user instantaneously what's changing between then and now. So you can see that they're minor in the instance of this location, but you can see that there are some changes that are happening. And so we want to be able to provide as much transparency as possible and show everybody, show our CAC, show the general public what's changing and where it's changing at. As with the other tool, this is also interactive. You can click on a given area. So I'll just go ahead and click over here. I just clicked on this little green portion, and it gives you some information. It tells you that you're on the 2009 GDP land use side, and it tells you that this is a natural features land use that we just selected. On the right-hand side, same thing. I just clicked in this area right here, and we're seeing that now we're in the Plan 2040 proposed land use side, and this is our rural designation. And on this side, we also want to provide a little more information. So we have number of parcels that collectively make up this land use category throughout the county. So we have 17,344 and the acres of that designation throughout the county. So a lot of just kind of a lot of interesting information here, and just a neat tool to really help the public visualize what is in fact changing here. And again, with the other tool, you can navigate in with that plus icon, navigate out with the minus icon, and then hit that little house icon to zoom back to the full extent. And try not to lose sight of your little swiper here in the process. Sometimes likes to go off to the side. Last thing I'll mention is that there is a legend. You can see here, it's denoting, in this instance, we have our land use change applications, staff recommendations, but then also the different land use types color coded here. So you can see for the 2009 GDP land use plan, that whole color scheme, symbology, as we call it. And then as we scroll up here, you can see the Plan 2040 proposed land use plan side. Now, again, we're targeting tomorrow. We hope to have this function within the scope of the online open house. And at that point, it should be a little bit of a more seamless experience for you all. So that's it. Yeah, that's it. Mike, I don't know
Thank you.
if there's anything else I forgot to cover there. Also
No, I think
happy to.
that's great.
Cool. All right.
So then the big question from Kate Bauer was, so when are we expecting you guys to give us your comments back? We'd like you to provide comments back by Monday morning on July 26th. So that way we have a couple of days to compile the data and look at it before our 29th meeting. But let me emphasize, as was said before, sorry, did I get my numbers wrong? It's July 29 is our meeting.
Right, so Monday, the 27th.
Yeah, 27. So Monday morning, 9 a.m., we'll pull down all the data that's received by then. So that way we can process it, look at it for discussion in our meeting on the 29th. But I'm going to emphasize that this isn't the last time you ever get to comment on the planned land use map, right? As Patrick mentioned earlier, this will be opened up for the broader general public review as well, and we'll have that open probably for we're targeting 4 full weeks for that period. And then, of course, it'll go in front of the Planning Advisory Board and eventually County Council before any final decision is made. So please take these next approximately 2 weeks and spend some time with this. Pre-prepared, please to give us, and I'm sure you will, give us feedback on in our next meeting about how easy or hard this is to use, things that you think we could do to improve it. And then we'll take that into consideration as we then refine it and roll it out for the general public as well. As I speak about the general public too, they will get to see a little more of this. And you can, of course, be able to see this as well. I mentioned this is built to be an online open house that covers all this content we've been developing for the plan. So we have this, as you would access the web page, this would be your landing page, the first thing you would see. It has a little welcome message. It gives an overview of the content of what's in this online open house. It explains why we're doing this virtually instead of in person. We'll have an established date for when this will open when it's ready. We also have a little overview about what the purpose of this is, what the planning process has been, what some of the key things we've heard from the community are, the different types of engagement we've conducted since 2017 for this process, some of the key themes we've heard, and how we've tried to respond to them in the plan. We also share in this the draft vision and themes. So the vision statement that you've all worked on, as well as the themes. We'll give the public also the opportunity to comment on at on the goals that we've developed collectively. As we've all discussed, we have 4 different areas for the goals: the natural environment, built environment, healthy community, healthy economy. So this again is one of those balancing acts with public engagement of how much to lay out there to get feedback on, but to not overwhelm. We've limited in this web tool the ability to comment on the goals, not digging down to the policies and strategies. We're considering making them available so people can see that whole suite, but through this tool, so we're not asking people to comment on over 400 items, which would be the collective number of all the goals, policies, and strategies, to just limit it to the approximately 40 goals. So they'd be able to scroll down, see the goals for the natural environment, a little bit of introductory information about what's covered underneath this goal topic, some background information about some of the challenges and opportunities that the county is facing in this regard, and then an opportunity to complete a survey where they get to look at the goals and rate them similar to what the CAC has done in rating these goals in your previous meetings. And then we also give them an opportunity at the bottom for each of these sections to have a space for general comment. So they'll be able to look at, the background context for the plan, the vision and themes, the draft goals, as well as commenting on the planned land use map. That'll be the full rollout for this. So if you all want to explore this during the next 2 weeks, we welcome it. But certainly you've already delved deeply into this content on the vision, themes, and goals. So if you want to focus your time and energy on the land use map, we certainly understand that. Okay. Elizabeth, you have your hand up?
I did. I really want to compliment OPZ on all the hard work, and Brent, the endless hours that you have put in specifically on this. It is amazing. It is so amazing. I also want to stress what Michael had said before. You as the CAC members are looking at the 40,000 level. You can comment when it goes public in August. And I would strongly encourage you as the CAC members to facilitate comments and to get the word out and to let people know eventually when this goes public that it is public, and to get as many comments and to spread it and share it and post it and get it out there. In the meantime, in the next 2 weeks, we're looking at the platform. We're not looking at trying to comment on every LUCA or every SR. You can do that later. We need to facilitate the platform and play with it and make sure that it is user-friendly, that it will be able to share all that kind of information. So I want to make sure that people understand you can, after all this, take off your CAC hat and comment as the neighbor or the HOA president or whatever. But right now, with your CAC hat on, you need to check the platform and check the website and comment before it goes public, because that's why we are being led in to do this. That's why they are opening this opportunity up to us. It's because they've done it, but now they know what they're doing. We don't know what we're doing. So let's help them and the general public make it as successful as possible. Thank you.
I just want to add to that, Elizabeth, if you all do get, feel like you're a little overwhelmed, we certainly want you to look at all of the staff recommended changes and the land use change applications. But if you do find, you're limited on time, then maybe just concentrate on your geographic areas, and that might help, because you will have an opportunity when this is open to the public to review it again.
Okay. A couple questions from the chat I'll just read off from Joel. Can you please send us a link? We will, as soon as this is all ready to go. Again, we have some technical issues we need to address to make sure this is fully functioning and works at a good speed. I know speed was a big comment that folks had, a frustration when we tried to put together this kind of interactive map in the spring for the land use change applications. So as soon as that's live, we'll send all the CAC members links to be able to access this tool. And then the go live date for the public, I'm not going to commit to anything right now because of the technical issues we're facing, but our target is, very beginning of August. Okay. Any other questions or comments about this? I know we've been talking at you all a lot. Any clarification questions about the platform?
I don't have one about the platform, but I missed an opportunity to ask one about the map before because I didn't see, I was waiting to the end of it to see if sea level rise would be mentioned. And I don't remember seeing anything about sea level rise, but we talked about that in our mapping session together. So how does sea level rise factor in with the resource map?
Holly, do you want to speak to that?
I think I would actually defer that question to Cindy or Christina.
Okay.
So we are including a sea level rise map in the plan. But if you remember, like back to our strategies, there's a lot of implementation to be done first before we actually have a layer to use as sort of a review or a layer that would like floodplain, wetland, etc. That would be used to be an indicator. So we'll have sort of a static map in the plan in our climate change section, but as part of the resource sensitive policy area map, that would be that would be later added, just like some of our other layers that Holly explained, our green infrastructure map, the updated critical area map. Anytime we get any better information or updated layers, we'll add to this resource sensitive policy area map.
So Melanie, I just want to add to what Cindy said, that right now on the DNR coastal GIS site that they have available, they have 3 different layers for sea level rise. They have what would happen, what landmass would be covered if we had 0 to 2 feet of sea level rise. And then I think there's 3 to 5 and then 5 to 10. The county hasn't actually done any analysis to determine which sea level rise projection we would use. And so I believe that we, like Cindy said, we have a lot more implementation that has to be done to make those decisions, because right now they're just layers. But if we just kind of picked 2 to 3 and it does end up being 5 to 10 and we didn't really do our homework to come up with what we were using, I think it's going to end up being very problematic. State Highway Administration has done analysis, and they laid out a whole methodology to figure out which of their roads are potentially going to be underwater. I see that the county has to undertake that kind of similar thing for county roads, but we haven't done it yet. So part of the GDP is a to-do list of, what do we really need to do? And there's a lot of work related to sea level rise that I think we need to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then there was another question in the chat about when comments are made, do they become public or are they just part of a staff database? And one thing I'll share before I ask Cindy or Christina to comment on that to make sure that I'm not making a mistake about the public records laws in Maryland. On the comment tool, there's an interesting function this gives you for the planned land use map. After you comment, you actually can see, or when you click on one of these parcels, you can actually see the list of who's commented on it previously. So you actually get some transparency in that. This field at the bottom where it says comments will build out as people comment on this, and you'll be able to see at a high level what other people have said about this. So for that particular piece, it's very visible on the website itself.
One of the things now that I've seen this whole demonstration, one of the things I'm going to talk to the staff about tomorrow is that if you are going to comment on a land use change application, you should be providing your address. Because if you live in Allegheny County, we are not going to take that seriously. So, because I know right now we're only saying name and email address, which quite frankly, people could create aliases and, you know, comment 10 times on something they don't like in their backyard. And then as far as the comments you're making right now, when we open this back up to the public, we're going to start with a clean slate. We're not going to start with the comments that we obtained from the CAC. But, you know, once it goes back out to the public, you would have an opportunity to comment.
So your comments get kind of a privileged status. You get first shot before the community does. I'm hearing very strange audio.
I think Anthony was trying to say something, but I'm not sure. It's not coming through.
Can we ask you to put it in the chat, Anthony, if it's brief? Okay, thanks.
Is there a way to make, or are there laws that the comments are public? Or is there a way to make the comment just to the staff? That's a really good question, Bill. Cindy or Christina?
I would not be supportive of having them come just to staff. I like the fact that they're going to be out there. I think it's more transparent. Because then if staff comes back and says, we've looked at all the data we've collected and it says X, Y, and Z, there isn't any transparency for other people having seen what was collected. Because for instance, we've been forced because of COVID to go to this online open house. Originally, we planned to do 9 public meetings.
Right.
And in those public meetings, when people come out and you're sitting in a room, you hear everything that's happening and there's a record that's being taken. So in a virtual environment, we have to strive to do the same thing.
Good points. Oh, I agree. I can see it would be, you know, people would be commenting on a comment and have political views and one thing or another versus land use.
That's
Well,
kind of
let me ask.
as well, is that it, you know, I get the transparency and think it's probably the right thing to do, but my concern would be it just becomes like another Twitter battle or Facebook feed or something that just gets out of hand.
Well, let me ask the staff this question. For those staff that analyzed all the comments that came in on the land use change applications when we had it out to the public, how did it go? I mean, was it crazy or were people just making the comment about what they were seeing?
It wasn't public though. It was when we made comments on the Luca applications, nobody else saw it.
Yeah, it went out to the entire public. So
Yeah, it did. It was out for about 45 days earlier this year.
Yes, but if you made a comment, I didn't see what other people commented on. Maybe I didn't look, but I commented, but I didn't see a whole list of other comments. Could I have?
That's a good question. Patrick or Mark, who I know had worked with that, can you answer that question?
Hey, I'm sorry, the question was, can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. So remember earlier this year, the land use change applications, they were out to the public for comment. And as people were making comments on each application, were all the previous comments that had been made available to the public to
No.
view?
No.
Okay. All
They were
right.
not.
So I'm incorrect about that, Elizabeth.
Okay, that's what I thought. And you were only allowed to comment once. I know that. And then,
Yeah, we had collected names and I think emails. We had identifiers, so we knew who made the comments, and that was for that reason.
Right. We also had IP address information, just to try and weed out what Christina was mentioning. The idea that someone might go in there and use different aliases to leave multiple comments. We wanted to make sure that we were capturing that and not allowing that kind of interaction to dilute the veracity of the comments. And we're gonna utilize a similar veracity moving forward. And if I can, Christina, you also posed a question about the comments that came in during that go round, and you asked, you kind of asked, what do they look like? And to answer your question, some of them are really explicit, really concise, really to the point of a given application, and then other ones were very general. And it was actually going through that process that informed how we went ahead and designed the front end of this comment period, because we want to make sure that when we're getting a comment, that it's something that we can take and we can distill it down to ideas that then can be compared apples to apples with everyone else's comments. And we want to be able to make it usable data. Now, when it's a several paragraph long essay, it's really difficult to do that. We did develop methods, and it was really through that process we were able to come up with the series of themes that we then utilized for the primary justification options, the two drop-down options in the application and land use comment tool. So hopefully that provides a little bit of insight into that question and the process and sort of how we got here.
Okay. Let me pivot this for a second. We have a couple of patient folks. Anthony Brent had written in a comment in the chat when his voice wasn't working well. And then Pat Lynch has been waiting to make a comment as well. I think Anthony's question is pretty quick. His question is, after the CAC has this initial review over the next 2 weeks, and then it's open for the general public, should they comment as CAC members or public citizens? So any direction from that?
I think when it opens up to the public, any comments from CAC members should be going in as you personally.
I agree, and I think that's the difference is right now you can do comments as CAC, but otherwise, really, July 29th is the last meeting for a while. And so you then get your life back, at least from what I know. Well, with the schedule, it's a little while, but you become a private citizen again.
Okay, and Pat Lynch has been waiting patiently. Pat, you had something?
Yeah, mine is a comment and a request, and that is when you show the maps in any document or any display, it is extremely helpful if you have the date, if possible, of that map, because when we're looking at a map, we don't know if it was last year or 25 or 50 years ago. That's the first thing I always look for is the date.
Okay.
I think that's a great comment, Pat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and there was one more question in the chat from Joan Turek. How will all groups of citizens be, actually, Joan, would you mind retyping? There's a typo, I can't quite.
It's reached. I think
Oh,
she's
reached.
saying
Okay.
reached.
Yeah. We are working on that process right now. We're engaging with our Office of Constituency Services to make sure that we're kind of aligning all the resources that the county has to be able to reach out as broadly as we can. We'll also be hoping to rely on a lot of our partners, you as a CAC members, other organizations that the county has relationships with to help amplify and send out the notice to make sure that people get to see this. One of the opportunities of doing the online space is that hopefully it can be more accessible. That you don't need to show up on a Thursday night at 7 p.m. when you don't have childcare or when you're working in the evenings, have an evening shift. Of course, as the school closures have shown us, broadband accessibility is an issue for a lot of communities. So we're looking to think about how we can help try to mitigate that as well. But yeah, we're working on trying to make sure that we can extend this out as broadly as we can.
Before we go on to the bids, which we need to address, Cindy, or I'm not sure who's going to do this, but let's adjust the agenda just slightly. This goes public, hopefully sometime in early August. It has to be available online for 30 days.
No, that's not true. You're thinking of the entire plan.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I take that back. Whoever I wrote that back to, I apologize. Go, Cindy. Up to you. Over to you. Sorry.
I was planning to go over all of that at the end. I think we still want to go revision themes.
Yeah, let me briefly touch on that, and then we can get to those next steps of schedule. So for the vision themes, I think we just briefly touch on this. Thank you all for the folks who read through and commented on these, and for all the work you've done on them over time. It's really challenging to try to articulate. There's so much in our minds that we want to convey about the future of the county. To try and distill it to a handful of sentences is really challenging. What we did as staff, kind of hearing this question come up at various points in time in the last few months from our meetings with CAC, we've seen folks comment saying, this language still doesn't feel quite right for the themes. So now that we've done all this work on the goals, policies, and strategies, we want to go back and to look and see if we can clean up the language a little bit. And so here's a high level of what we did with those refinements. One is we put that theme about the resilient and sustainable communities up front. It seems like that's a consistent high priority for this group, is that we kind of put environmental concerns up front. So we just changed that order. It was the last in the series, now we put it as the first. We tried to make them more concise while still maintaining the sentiment and the idea. We tried to make sure that economic development was more clearly included. It gets kind of broadly referenced, but we thought it needed to have a clear statement in there, especially given that this is going to be released right as the country is suffering through a recession. And to make sure that we're clearly mentioning the diversity of communities that we have, that we have such a range of, from rural to the suburban to waterfronts, to the town center type communities in the county, that we had some reference to those, to that diversity of landscape types and community types. Here's the quick snapshot of the responses on the survey. Again, as we've done with the goals, we just asked you to give us an initial reaction of, do you think that the changes, help improve the goal? Do you support them? Or are you neutral? They're okay, I can live with them. Or do you oppose? I think they've lost touch with what we were trying to say. So as you can see here, mostly green. And when you add the neutrals, if we're okay with that, we get to roughly 75% of us being in support or at least okay with the language. And 2 or 3 folks out of the 12 had some strong concerns as well. We did have a few good points made in comments on this about ways to improve the language and wording. So we'll take those into consideration as we make a revision of this. One thing I think that's a good example of how we try to wrestle to find the right balance in these statements is with the resilient and sustainable communities. The last sentence there speaks to achieving net zero energy. And so we had one comment that talked about, well, we need to really be speaking about carbon and getting to net zero carbon. Another comment saying that, this sounds too ambitious of a statement and maybe we should just strike that entire last sentence. So we're trying to find where's there some space within these different sub-opinions that we can get to a place that can be broadly supported. So with that, I think we'll take another cut at refining these that you'll see as documents come out. But I think we've got, looks to me like looking at this graph that we're going in the right direction. And then Cindy, did you want to talk about next steps?
Sure. So as we've discussed, throughout this meeting, over the next 2 weeks, you're gonna review the land use map and provide input to us, not only on the recommendations, but also the format and what you think of it. And then we hopefully shortly after, we'll meet with you on the 29th to go over your comments on the land use map. And then shortly after that, we would send out a link for the general public to review the land use plan and the goals, the open house format that you just saw. We'd like to give at least 3 weeks of review for that. Keep in mind, this is supposed to take the place of public forums that we were going to have. But as Mike pointed out, you'll be able to do this in your own time and not at a specific date and time and place. So hopefully we'll get more input this way, and it is something that we'll measure, against the other forums that we had. And then in late August, so that would be your August 26th meeting date. We'd like to share the full document with you. I'm actually very excited to share that. Not only has the staff been working very hard at producing an online open house to share the land use plan, in response to COVID, but also they've been working on finalizing the document itself, and what I've seen so far is fantastic. So that I'm excited about. And that kind of concludes your input for the Plan 2040 process. It then goes into a more formal process where the Planning and Zoning Office will brief the PAB starting sometime in October. And then after that briefing, they will hold a public hearing, and then they will also make a recommendation to the county executive. Then the county executive will finalize the plan and send it to the council in the form of a bill where it will be introduced. And then there'll be several hearings before it's that the council will hold before it's adopted. And we would expect, well, especially Elizabeth at PAB and council to, give kind of a brief support of the document, and any others who wish to, speak up. If you descend from that, we do ask that you make sure that you let the PAB and the council know that you're not speaking on behalf of the CAC, but you're speaking as an individual during that process. And the other thing I guess we would need to know is if a supermajority of you don't agree with anything in the plan, so that's saying like 75 to 85% of you are not in agreement with something in the plan, that we know that we will point that out to the PAB and the executive as part of the record. Are there any questions about the rest of the process?
Yeah, a couple things in the chat, and then let me ask, Pat Lynch has had her hand up as well. So Pat, if you could comment, and then we'll get to the chat questions.
In discussions over the format of what we have already inputted into our draft copy, there's been a lot of content coming in from the different segments of and departments in the county that doesn't work itself into a clear narrative. But my understanding is that after you get all the information in that you need, that the county is going to rewrite this in good English so that it will then become a very professionally written narrative. Is that true?
Yes, that's what I was referring to. You know, I'm going to be happy for you all to see this, the two finished products. There's 2 volumes. I think we've talked about that before. One that's in an action plan, and the second, which is, you know, more the summary document. A lot of most of the content you've already seen, but yes, it will be written as if one person wrote it.
Okay, thank you.
And then a couple more process questions, Cindy, about the state review. At what point in this process does the document go to the state, and then will the CAC be able to see the comments from the state?
So that's part of the public review. Did I not mention that? I'm sorry. After your meeting in August, then we will send the entire document out for not only the general public to review, but also the state and our local surrounding jurisdictions. And those comments that we get back will be part of the record, and we can post them online.
Okay. And then, and you mentioned, so the CAC will see the full draft of the report, target date end of August, before it goes out to the full public. And then a comment about the Planning Advisory Board process. So there's questions from Melanie about how that works. That's
yeah. So it's held by the PAB. I mean, OPZ staffs. You know, we serve as their staff. So it will, you know, actually, you know, I'm gonna guess it'll be a Zoom meeting. I'm not, you know, sure yet. Those details haven't been worked out. But it will be a hearing that's held by the PAB.
I think she was asking whether there would also be any further comment after. Would there be any further input on the GDP after the PAB? And Melanie, you're saying to be the input from the public or from the CAC or from whom? The PAB can comment, but by the time it goes to PAB, it should be done.
Well, it goes to the PAB, and the comment period, the hearing is the public comment. You know, whether it's CAC, like I said, we would fully expect, you know, the CAC to give a brief, you know, or comment about the plan during that process, during the hearing process, as well as individuals. And then, you know, that those comments are available to the public, but there is an input after that, as far as the CAC doesn't come back and discuss those.
So I'm not too familiar with the PAB and exactly how that works. So I guess my kind of like, if the PAB makes recommendations of changes and some or all of the CAC members don't agree with those changes, is there any opportunity, or I guess if the public doesn't agree with those changes, will we know their changes at their hearing, or?
They'll deliberate. No, you won't know it at the hearing, because after the hearing, they'll close the hearing. and then they will deliberate. And then that will be, those deliberations will be made public. They have a website. They'll send a memo to the county executive, and that will be available on the PAB's website. That doesn't mean that those recommendations will be taken. I mean, they'll be considered. And then
Okay, so
after that, the executive, it's
the administration has their opportunity to take those into effect,
Yeah.
make the edits they want before getting it to council. And then if the council has it, we have council meetings, and if anybody wants to speak again in any way, they can do that at council meetings.
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And then a question about region plans, order and timing. Cindy, do you want to touch on that, please?
We'd like to discuss that with you on the 29th if you have, any recommendations. If that's something you want to do. It's not going to be up to us. That again is something that will be decided on by council. But if you have a recommendation that you want to for us to consider, we'll have to do that as part of the plan. Make some sort of recommendation in the plan. That doesn't mean that's what council will adopt. I'm sure that'll be a big discussion. But if it's something that you want to think about over the next couple of weeks as well and give us some feedback on that, we can include CAC recommendation.
Cindy, I just want to make a comment in relation to the order of the region plans. So staff has taken a look at some potential orders for the region plans. And, when staff looks at things, we come at it usually with a methodology. So one of the orders that we have come up with would go, it's a grouping by geography, so that region plans near each other would go at the same time, so that if we need cross-pollination across the boundaries, it could happen. Or as you saw, there are 33 land use change applications that we are recommending not be addressed until a region planning process. Another option we looked at was which regions have the largest number of unanswered land use change applications, and that could identify an order. Or which do we think, based on growth pressure, what could an order be based on that analysis? So you can see in our analysis, we're using basically one parameter at a time to come up with options. But you all live in the community. And we think ultimately the order of the region plans is going to be some hybrid. But we would like to hear your comments on that. And Cindy, I think we should send them kind of the draft work that we have done to think about. And some of you may say, we absolutely don't want this region plan to go first for these reasons, but we do want this one to go first. So that is a discussion we do need to have, because you're going to want to send that forward as part of the, to be evaluated in the decision making for the PAB, the council, etc.
And Kate is asking, can we clarify what is meant by up to the council? They're the ones that are going to adopt the plan, which will have, a recommended order in it, as well as, all of the, I don't know if you all remember early on in our discussions, we went over what there was a council bill that is requiring that region plans, continue after the GDP is adopted, and there's certain parameters that have to be included in the GDP. So ultimately, we'll make a recommendation, just like we are on the land use plan and goals and policies and strategies. We'll do that as well for the region plan, but the council is adopting the plan.
Cindy, that was my point though, and to what Christina said. It feels wrong that we be silent on that. It
Yeah,
feels,
and I'm not saying you're not going to be silent. No, you wouldn't. You would make a recommendation.
we have one more meeting.
You have the 29th meeting, and then August 26th is what we're shooting for. And we'll send you information. So we have this, we did a spreadsheet that just kind of lists all kinds of different parameters as Christina was discussing that might be useful to you. But you might have other methods that you might want to look at versus what the methods that we were.
Just feels important that we come forward with a united approach to how we recommend it be done.
Mm-hmm.
Are we okay? All right. I agree with you, Kate, and I think that one of the things that we can do offline, because we don't need to take up staff time, and that's the reason why I wouldn't say to have another meeting, because that's staff time and it's open meeting and one thing or another. But we can certainly have these discussions within the email group. One of the things I had talked to the staff about was going the oldest would go first, because that hasn't been updated. And I think Anthony, you guys, I think Mayo was the oldest one. I could be wrong, but you know, that was one of the recommendations too, would be that go in reverse order for that. The soonest, the most updated one would be the last one. But also another question, and Christina, I don't know if you guys know this or not, how many are we doing at a time?
Three at a time.
3 at a time, and there's 9.
And they're 9.
So that gives you a basis for that. So that's another homework assignment. Please start looking at that, and then we'll get some information from the staff on that. But that's something that we do need to put in, and it will become part of the bill.
Yeah, and I actually agree with Elizabeth. The Mayo Edgewater area, it's been a while, and it's a smaller area, so it's easier to tackle. Might be good to get the kinks out using this as a guinea pig. Did that come through?
Yeah, but don't forget that we have 9 region areas, not
Correct.
So the small planning areas that we did, a region may encompass 2 or 3 of those.
You're not alone anymore, Anthony.
Right.
No. Don't look at me.
Okay.
We're at time.
Are we about that time? I think we are. We're a little bit past. So make a note, there's 2 more meetings. So we're looking at July 29th and August 26th as the CAC. I hope you all will support us and come when we go before PAB, before the county council and everything else. But those are the 2 official CAC meetings. And I'm sure you all have read the minutes. And do I have a motion to adopt the minutes from June 17th, 2020?
Yes.
Second, that was Anthony, yes, and Karen on a second. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. We've talked about next steps, and don't forget at the end of this, we need to do the survey. So make sure that you do rate the meeting on a scale of 1 to 10. And there's 2 more questions here. One is, has it been determined that the comprehensive zoning will be done after the 9 region areas are done or after each 3? And the answer was, okay, well, that went to everyone. You guys can read that on your own. Sorry. That's available for reading.
Well, did we send an answer out to Bill on that? Basically, we're intending that the comprehensive rezoning is done as part of each region plan. So it's not like we would be waiting 6 years to do any comp rezoning. it would be done in smaller chunks by regional areas.
Okay, that answers the questions. I think that's done. So, okay, and a big thank you. You guys, I mean, you saw what has gone into that map. It is amazing. And so please take the time in the next 2 weeks to play with it, to work out the kinks with it, because they have spent endless nights, and I'm sure waking up in the middle of the night and thinking, oh, I need to try this, or let's change this color to that, or whatever. So please make sure that you utilize this, because you are representing your area. And when it goes out to the public, I hope you will represent it well and make sure that your area, it has enough time and the capability, you'll be able to explain to them how to utilize the map and to make the best public input and comments possible. So, any other things from the administration? No? Are we good? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Second man from the name. I didn't see who got the first one.
Well,
But thank you all. I do appreciate it. And please, let's utilize this opportunity to the fullest extent that we can and make Anne Arundel the best place for all. Thanks. Good night.